Look, it certainly scared me 2 years ago. It scared me last year as well. Once you know what the race really entails, even if you've completed it once, I think then you know how much it hurts and how much you are going to suffer. But I feel now, having done it twice, I'm probably in the best position to be able to go and do it a third time.
Welcome to the Low Tide Boyz, a Swimrun podcast. I'm Chip.
I'm Chris, and this is episode 227 of the show. We're stoked to welcome back our friend and legendary adventure racer, Rob Preston. His team is gearing up to defend their one water race title, and we checked with him on what it's like to race a swim run that only takes a few hours, what it's like to swim 70 kilometers, and other such mind-blowing topics. But first,
training update. Training is well underway for ÖTILLÖ Whistler.
Yeah.
We had our first Rust Buster swim run of the year just this last Sunday, just a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was very hyped, and it was really cool. We got to have, if you were tuned into our Instagram account, you might have noticed that Team TBD, Phil and Addison, were in town. Addison was running the Miwok 100K Ultra Marathon. Yeah. He hobbled out to do a swim run with us the next morning at 6:45 in the morning.
Yes.
So bless you, Addison. And Hunter came down from Santa Rosa, which is really cool. He moved out from Boston to Northern California, hit us up on the emails, and drove down to do a little swim run with them. So it was really great to meet Hunter, and we haven't had Phil up in this neck of the woods for a swim run action.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, and Hunter even went away with prizes. Isn't he testing out your Frank paddles?
Yes, I said, well, while you're here, have you used carbon fiber paddles? And he's like, oh, no. And he's like a swimmer type background. And I said, well, you know what? I happen to have these that someone else just returned from me that were previously on loan. So he has those to play with there. And him and his sister, our team, and they did ÖTILLÖ the Swimrun World Championship last year, and they're looking to do it again. ÖTILLÖ was their first swim run.
Wow.
Because they won the lottery from Casco Bay, and that's how they got it. So they started a swim run, but their first official swim run that they finished was ÖTILLÖ. Very impressive, Hunter.
I mean, and I missed a lot of that because I had to take off. So
yeah, we did like a couple, a mile and a half cool down run or warm up run. Actually,
I'm thinking that's a show, man. I want to hear that whole story.
I think it would be as well. But yeah, training's underway. Chris and I are going to get back out there, do another swim run. We got some mega size keels in that we're looking to test out.
Yeah, we'll be testing those out.
So looking forward to that.
Yeah, and honestly, it was really fun to just be swim running again.
Yes.
And, it's funny because, we basically haven't done it since Austin. And what did it take? Maybe not even a minute for the vibes to lock in.
Yeah, it was a good time, as it always is. And it just, I when we were discussing this before Addison's race on Saturday, we were all at your house. I crashed the party. I mean, if two other swim runners are going to be around, I have to show up.
It's not crashing when you're invited, by the way.
I did just let myself into your house.
Well, it happened very quickly. It happened. So yeah, I guess that's a longer story about this crazy weekend where Addison, it's been beautiful weather up here. And then just on Saturday when he's running a pretty hard 100K in the Marin Headlands, it's just the worst day it's been. Hail,
weather,
wind, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But he endured. But yeah, they get on a Friday, so we did a little pasta, old school kind of carb loading thing. And they came over, and as soon as they told me they were coming over, I texted you. I was like, "Oh, by the way, these people are coming through, and I'm apparently cooking for them."
Yeah.
So you came over with the kids and stuff, and it was it was fun.
Your wife had to endure many hours of pull buoy swim run talk. The gear talk was flowing.
She's seasoned, but yes, there was a lot. There was let's check out. Let's go to Chris's garage to check out his gear. It's who wants to see 8 different types of carbon fiber paddles?
It was a similar vibe to how, the shakeout swim runs are, or the meetups where everyone's talking, looking at different gear, but in Chris's kitchen and around his dining table.
Yeah, well, that Saturday when Addison's race is going on, Phil and I were hanging out for probably like 10 hours straight.
Wow.
Until he then paced Addison for the last 13 miles. And I have to say, I would say only about maybe 6 hours of that was swimrun content.
That's pretty good. You weaned yourself off a little.
That's still a lot. Still, I mean, I was here for, he's asking questions. I'm like, well, you want to talk about this? We got nothing else to do. Here we go.
Yeah.
But anyway, fun weekend. And because I had to leave early, I didn't bust my rust. Like,
oh, you still have some rust to bust?
I just wanted to do it for longer, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, you'll get a Buster Rust here this weekend, but we are now less than 30 days away from Swimrun Bellingham.
That's right.
Up in Washington State. So we're looking forward to going up there and racing that one in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We have been seeing some of you folks will be out. Can't wait to see you out there. Be sure to swing by and say hi. That is a classic Low Tide Boys in and out situation.
Yeah.
But looking forward to doing it nonetheless.
For sure.
Now to this week's shout out.
Yeah, this week we're shouting out our former guest of the show, Anna Lundberg. So she showed true swimrun spirit. I mean, this is just so great. A listener reached out to us asking us to connect her to Anna because she heard about her advice on how to deal with injury after listening when we interviewed her for our Countdown ÖTILLÖ series from 2 years ago. So she emailed us and she's like, "Hey, can you connect me with Anna?" I didn't even say anything. I just forwarded it.
Yeah.
They connected. Anna was super helpful.
Yeah.
We just heard back. I just got the feedback from the listener that, they connected, and it's just, swimrunners are just the best people.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw that unfold in the inbox as well, and it was just and I feel like without a doubt, I knew, I was like, oh yeah, Anna would love to chat, or insert anyone's name that we've had on the show or in the swimrun circle, would be more than happy to be connected up to answer a question or help somebody out. And again, that's what we really just
it's a beautiful
really
thing
love about this thing.
To quote
really
our
is.
friend Phil.
It is a beautiful thing. Speaking of beautiful things, the Feats of Endurance Award is a very beautiful thing, and this week's winner goes to our longtime friend and friend of the show and Patreon supporter, Carolyn. She was recently in town in Marin, but she's back in Michigan. It's not what she won the Feats of Endurance for. She set a PR at the Toronto Half Marathon over the weekend. She's getting back into running after putting some time off. But way to go on the PR in Toronto.
Strong work.
I think she's vying for a little Boston situation.
You know what? I wouldn't doubt it. And we know her really well. And
yeah.
Pretty much
she'll make it happen.
Anything she sets her mind to,
she'll make it happen.
She accomplishes.
She will make it happen. So major congrats on that. Of course, we saw that over in the Low Tide Boys Strava Club. So head on over to Strava, search Low Tide Boys, and join swimrunners from around the world as they train for stuff. Could be half marathon PRs, could be Boston Marathon, could be shutters, grass pearls, bike rides, but hopefully it's some swim runs. Hopefully swim runs.
Yeah, I was in the Strava Club today, and I was just scrolling through the activities, and it was really funny because all of a sudden, depending on the time of day, there'd be a ton of like UK and Ireland workouts and stuff like that. Very
international flavors,
and you can tell, hey, that's when they're waking up to do their long runs and whatnot. So it's it's kind of inspiring. Dude, it gets me stoked.
It does. 650 members strong.
Amazing.
I cannot believe it there. We'll just go ahead and say the largest swim run group on Strava. Now for a little bit of show business. Are you interested in signing up for an ÖTILLÖ race in North America? Psst, join the Low Tide Boys at Whistler in July, just by the way. If you are, enter code LOWTIDE15 to save a cool 15% off your race registration for any and all 2024 events. We'll be towing the line at Whistler, Casco Bay, and Austin this year. We hope to see you out there.
Yeah, man.
That's cool that Lars and the team hooking it up. Lars Good People likes to get 50% off. I love it. Speaking of ÖTILLÖ, yours truly, the Low Tide Boys, we are taking over.
We're current. When this airs,
it's been taken over.
Yes.
It's on our control right now. The ÖTILLÖ USA Instagram account. We are giving you a little bit of look on what our training looks like, some podcasts behind the scenes,
trail tours,
trail tour. Oh my God, all sorts of stuff. Not to mention multiple giveaways there from our friends at Low Tide Boys Merch Shop, Arc Sports, Precision Fuel and Hydration.
Yeah.
So head on over to ÖTILLÖ Race USA to follow along, and obviously Low Tide Boys for all your memes and swim run goodness.
Yeah, for all your meme needs.
All your meme needs, we can meet them. No doubt about it. Now, on to our conversation with Rob Preston, one water race champion and fellow Bluey aficionado.
That's right. It was really great to catch up with Rob. I mean, we ask all the hard-hitting questions, such as, does he watch Bluey? What are sleep monsters? And what it's like to win the one water race, a.k.a. the ultimate proof of human capacity last year, 2023. Rob's great. We love this conversation. We know that you will too. I mean, how much fun was it chatting with Rob?
He's always a great guy. He feels like somebody that, you could go out. Not that I would go out on a one water race length activity with him, but a nice casual runabout or walkabout. They're always great to catch up with him and hear what he's up to. I believe after we record this with him, he had an adventure race to tend to. So I think they got second place from what I remember, if my Instagram scrolling recalls. But they're back. They're headed back to try to defend the one water race championship. And I don't even know what to say.
I'm still, I think I mentioned this in the interview. Like, usually you're talking about any race, I'm like, ooh, I want to do it. Yeah. This is the one we've had so many guests on talking about this thing, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm cool.
Yeah,
it's a beast.
It certainly is, and you'll hear some of the swimming feats, the gear, some of the strategies, fueling, the sleep monsters. You'll hear all about it in this episode. So without any further ado, let's kick it over to our conversation with Rob Preston, one water race champion. Crikey, the sleep monsters are here.
All right, back on the show, our friend Rob Preston of Thought Sports, also from Team 8, then Team 2, and now Team 3 Australia from the One Water Race. Welcome back to the show, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, super stoked to chat with you. I think it's like, there's just so much to talk about with this race. But first, I just want to get a question out of the way that my 4-year-old, I was talking to Chipper about this, my 4-year-old, he's in the state where he's just asking a million questions, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm recording this podcast. Well, with whom? I'm like, this guy Rob, he won this race. It's crazy. It's like, where's he from? Well, he's from Australia. And then he's like, ask him if he watches Bluey.
Yeah, I mean, Bluey's pretty well my favorite show. If,
well, we all have that in common.
All right, I will report back.
8:05 in the morning, and if the kids aren't home, I'll still turn on the TV to watch it. It's
I find
program doing well around the world.
Yeah, I find myself, the kids, I'll be like 2 episodes, and I'm like, wait, the kids aren't even in the room anymore, and I'm just keep watching the episodes. It's so strong. So I'm glad we got that one out. But the real question is, why aren't you all Team 1 for one water race coming off the victory in 2023?
Yeah, good question. I actually don't know what the process of team order is, but I know Elizabeth in our team was very keen to be in the 1, 2, or 3 position because we know where the allocation of rooms are at the accommodation, and the top 3 get sort of the waterfront views and closer to the sauna. So yeah, we're happy to still be number 3 and get one of the, in our opinion, better rooms.
Nice. Well, that just goes to show your wealth of experience with this race. You did the inaugural one, came in second, finished in, few minutes under 50 hours, which just sounds ridiculous.
Lord.
And we should say, if this is your first time listening to the show, if your first time hearing about One Water Race, it's a 250-kilometer race with about 50K of swimming across practically the entire Stockholm archipelago. It's crazy. Rob's done the first 2 editions, and the first one, as we mentioned, came in second place. And the second edition last year finished just shy in 60 hours, won the thing, but we're also the only team that finished. Like, can you just, no question, I'm just back to you.
Reaction.
Yeah, look, it's been an exciting couple of years to get into Swimrun. Obviously having quite a long background in adventure racing and orienteering. We're always looking for the next biggest and best thing. And look, it certainly scared me 2 years ago. It scared me last year as well. Once you know what the race really entails, even if you've completed it once, I think then you know how much it hurts and how much you are going to suffer. But I feel now, having done it twice, I'm probably in the best position to be able to go and do it a third time. So It did take me about 4 months after the race before I felt like I wanted to go for a swim. So it does definitely leave some trauma. And I'd take the kids down to the beach over summer. And look, I live in Victoria. It's down the south of Australia. The beach does take a while to warm up. And if it wasn't a warm day, look, I'd just sit there under a towel. I was I was not desperate to hop in the water. I just was like, I'm just going to stay warm. I have absolutely no desire to go for a swim. So it really took until January. So yeah, a good 4 months before I felt like, I'm keen to go for a swim again.
Yeah. And last time we checked in with you was way back in October of 2022, episode 145, for those keeping track at home. So that would have been right after your first attempt at the One Water Race. And I feel like I remember, I didn't go back and do my homework and listen to that episode, but I felt like the sense that we were getting from you was like you kind of figured out what you felt like it would take to finish that race after that first attempt. And is that an accurate? Am I recalling that accurately? Like, you feel like I think I know what it's going to take to finish this race, because you guys were really, really close that first year.
Yeah, look, for everyone, the first year was a huge learning curve, and we really didn't know if anyone would finish or if it was possible. And certainly, coming from a non-swimming background, the distance just totally daunted me. But we, just took the race as it went, and we're always, working to keep moving forward. Then last year, I guess, we took on all that experience, and then we had, really another 12 months to train for it, although you certainly don't train all the year round for it. But we knew what we could improve on, what we did well, and we literally had never done a swim run race before the first One Water Race. So, we took a lot on board from our support team member, Julian, who really had the most experience, even though he wasn't in the water, but he taught us so much. And then really for the last 12 months, we've just been working on little aspects of the race, and really happy with how we performed last year.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, what do you think accounts for the fact, experience and just grit and everything has to be a huge factor, but that you guys were the only team that finished? Well, what was it about I was going to say the day, but the several days, the conditions that made last year's race appear, from us, sitting on our couches.
Watching on the internet.
Yeah, what was the difference between the years that made last year so much harder, at least like on paper?
Yeah, I mean, look, there were two main differences, and the first one was the water temperature was colder. I'd say about sort of 2 degrees Celsius across the whole race, and it doesn't really sound like a lot, but when it's only 16 to 18 the first year, I'm not going to do the calculation for you on Fahrenheit, but it was bearable in the first year, and we did most of the race with like a single swim run suit with an arc kangaroo top underneath, and then really it was only some big swims towards the end that we put on a full triathlon wetsuit. But then coming into last year, the water temperatures, it wasn't a great summer, and the whole organisation and the athletes were quite worried, even in the few weeks leading up to it, that the temperatures were going to be quite low. It did pick up just before the race, but it was still sort of 14 to 16 degrees. And that really meant that we actually did a lot of the race, or most of the race, in 2 swim run suits.
Yeah, so that's like sub 60 degrees Fahrenheit for us, dumb Americans.
57.2.
Yeah. So I think that made a factor on, I wouldn't say that we necessarily swam slower. I think we were probably swimming faster just due to sort of our improved performance over the 12 months. But it really did affect how we moved on the land as well, because it took longer to warm up each time. You're wearing more gear and still having to eat a lot. So I feel like we never ran quite as fast, and that's what dragged the race out a bit longer. And then also the fact that it was seriously a lot longer distance. Like Thomas had set the winning time. He didn't really know what it was going to be the first year. I think it was an estimated 55 hours, and then the winning time was about 48. Last year, he really wanted to push it out to 60 hours to get a more challenging sort of sleep deprivation or fatigue factor into the race. But then, we finished, 60 hours, but it was an extra 25 kilometres of swimming that we did last year. So based on our calculations, my measurements, we did about 50 kilometres of swimming the first year, and then pretty well close to 75 last year. So that really accounts to, why it was tougher. And I can't really speak for the other teams. I know there were comments, say, from our South American friends that they felt like they had improved between years 1 and 2, but we're still like a long way off the front of the race. And it didn't feel to us that we were moving faster, but maybe comparatively we were able to handle the conditions a bit better.
Yeah.
Most mortals don't even swim 75Ks an entire calendar year, let alone over the course of a couple of days. So, yeah.
Nor do I.
I think one big step forward from a viewership standpoint was the much improved tracking and the live video feed. I mean, we really were getting regular updates through the YouTube channel, and the trackers were really on point this year, which I know was kind of a little bit of frustration for everyone the first year there. But it was really enjoyable to have that aspect of it, and you kind of would get these micro little 6 to 7 minute videos every few hours there. But it seemed like at one point, when you all kind of pulled ahead there, I don't even know what day this would have been. I'm going to say day two likely, but it seemed like you felt like, hey, we kind of got this. We just it was just such strong motivation from you all there. Is that an accurate kind of feeling to what the shoes on the ground were?
Yeah, it was. Look, it was certainly an improved coverage, and I guess we didn't know that at first, maybe for the first 24 hours or so of the race, because year 1 we still had a runner photographer with us the whole time. What changed last year was the live coverage aspect of that, and it took us a little bit to realise what that it really did mean live.
Oh yeah, it was live.
And that, if we had the runner with the live backpack, most likely you're going to be on air. And, I was surprised going back and looking and watching it and seeing how good the sound quality was in particular. Like a lot of the time you're talking to the cameraman if they, wanted to ask some questions, and I didn't really know how well it would come out, but it's sort of quite impressive. So it shows, it really changes the race plan a little bit in how you could actually use that live coverage, or whether you I'm happy to talk about what we're doing all the time, but then you kind of go, well, do we want the teams to know that we're going to have a sleep, or do we want to tell the teams that we're not going to sleep?
Right, and then sleep.
In reality, we really are going to have a sleep.
The tactical considerations. Yeah, that's a really good point. One thing about just your swim run background, which I still want to ask you a whole bunch of questions about one water race, but really quickly. So this year, you and team members basically did your first swim run that took less than at least 59 hours, and was it New Macedonia? I think it was.
New Caledonia.
Macedonia. That's someplace completely different. But yeah, New Caledonia, and yeah. So I'd love to hear what it was like to do a swim run that probably only took you a few hours.
Yeah, look, we got quite a late invitation to go across to New Caledonia, which is island in the Pacific, a French colony, and it's actually really quite close to Australia. I think I worked out it was closer to Glenn's place in the Sunshine Coast where he lives than he actually lives to us down in Victoria. So it's 3.5 hour flight, and the team over there, led by Antoine, this was only their second event, and they've got a big team over there, a triathlon and multi-sport club that organise a lot of other events. But this year, it went from 140 participants last year to 340 this year.
Wow,
so
nice.
It shows how successful the first year was and how the sport's growing over there. And that doesn't even include another 50 volunteers or so on the club that we're helping out. And so, we were really impressed with the event and what it was like to do a shorter distance swim run. So we did the 42 kilometre.
Yeah, of course.
That's a layup for you.
Of course.
You give it the gas.
That's like the super short course.
That's right. It was a ÖTILLÖ merit race, and we were. I particularly was really impressed with the local teams. I thought we were racing quite well, but the swims weren't long enough for Glenn and I. It was actually a bit of an internal team battle, because we raced in pairs, and so Julian raced with Elizabeth and myself with Glenn. And if you've watched any F1 racing, you'll learn that it's always about beating your teammate more than anyone else on the grid. And that's what it was like for us too. But unfortunately, Julian and Elizabeth outperformed us, and they won the mixed class.
Oh, nice.
And were 6th overall. But and Glenn and I just about 5 minutes behind and in 8th. So some really good teams. Running was particularly high standard, and actually got won by a team, I'm not sure of their names, but from Tahiti as well. So another French colony, and those guys have been over to ÖTILLÖ as well and finished about the top 10. So it was just really different experience to One Water, but still it was actually a lake course. So it weaved across a man-made lake a lot of times, but really well thought out course with some technical running, quite varied landscapes as well, finished in the rainforest, but other parts were more like a open lava field style, sort of.
Wow.
Nowhere to hide. But we were quite lucky with the weather that day. It was cloudy and not as hot as what it sort of had been the previous days leading up to it. But overall, really, really fun time.
I love it. And a little team bonding in there as well, team competition, which is, bonding in its way.
Bonding / rivalry.
Now going back to one water race, you guys are going back. Now you have to go back to defend your title. I mean, the race isn't that old, but it seems like if you win, you gotta commit to come back and try to defend. How are you thinking, again, without giving information to your potential competitors and rivals, but how are you looking at training this year? Anything you're doing different now that you're wiser and all that?
Yeah, look, we've reviewed the last 2 years and made a few changes to our training, but we're not going to change things too much because we already had a pretty good, very happy with our performance. Personally, I want to actually get my running back up to where it was in year one. I felt like it was a bit lower last year. And the other guys, they were both, happy with their performance too. Liz is going to race a little bit less this year. She really ticked a lot of boxes last year with racing 24-hour races, World Road Gaining Championships in North America, only 5 or 6 weeks before a one water race. So she's going to look after her body a little bit more this year, and she's already really fresh and running and swimming well. So, and Glenn's sort of feels like he's done a lot of work trying out lots of different paddles, like being our lead swimmer. I guess it's probably more important for him than what it is for myself, but still working on that and getting stronger, but also wanting to just improve sort of pure speed as well out there, because that was quite important for us last year with 75 kilometres of swimming. If it's 2 seconds a lap faster for a different pair of hand paddles, then that's quite significant.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so obviously are you guys thinking like, we can't help but go down the gear direction because we're a couple of nerds, but what do you think? Are you thinking carbon fiber hand paddles? Like what have you guys been testing? How's that been going?
Yeah, well, look, we've actually only used plastic paddles the last 2 years, and I wasn't particularly in a hurry to change. I felt like if I've got through that race with my swimming background, then I was pretty happy to keep it with a reasonably small pair of plastic paddles. Glenn's been using and Liz have been using carbon paddles a lot in training, and we all did sort of swap to carbon paddles for the race in New Caledonia, and I'd say we probably will end up using them at one water race. And funnily enough, I'm waiting for the delivery man, like literally today, for another package from Sweden.
Yeah,
and,
our favorite type of packages.
Yeah, we're getting some a new pair of Evolvent paddles, which I tried out. Glenn's already had a pair, and to me they were the best that I felt. The longer, I guess, I don't know,
the tails,
the fin, wing things,
tails, yes, on them. To me, I felt like they improved my catch or my entry into the water a lot better, whereas like the shorter carbon paddles I found were a bit consistent with my stroke. So I found that they darted all over the water a little bit more compared to the carbon ones, but compared to the plastic ones. But the carbon ones are definitely lighter and stiffer. It's just whether your body's going to be able to maintain that for 50 to 75 kilometres of swimming. It's a hard ask.
Right. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Tall ass for the lats, for sure. Now you and the team come from a pretty rich adventure racing background, which seems to have really benefited you, obviously, in the second and preceding days there, that's at least in Chris and I's kind of, armchair quarterback analysis, we feel like that adventure racing background that you all have is what's really carrying you through the tough times, and namely like the sleep deprivation, really being able to handle that. And what I'm from the live feeds there were really some serious demons people were dealing with, and for the sleep deprivation there, is that obviously that's something that you experience a lot in adventure racing. Would you do you agree that background is really helping carry you all through?
Yeah, certainly. And it's the sleep deprivation, but then also it's the nutrition side, and it's not choosing one food over another. It's really just being able to eat whatever you've got, or make sure you have something that you feel like eating is so important over such a long race. And I think that's why you'll find the first 12, 16 hours into that first night, everyone is a lot closer because nutrition hasn't really come into it so much. I could certainly just eat gels all day for that period of a race if I needed to. But then after that, it's keeping warm, so having some warmer meals that stop you from being hungry, and just that consistency of feeding throughout the whole time. And then also, not making mistakes on the navigation side. So, that's definitely
it's like the equivalent of like swimming straight, right? Like it's not so many extra kilometers, but all possible. Now, I'm curious, like, if maybe you actually know the number, but how many calories were you guys consuming like per day?
Good question. I don't know the number. I know that when I go to pack for an event, I'm normally looking at around 250 calories an hour. Is that right? Calories or kilojoules? Or 50 grams.
Or 50 grams of carbs. Yeah, we can speak that language too, like trying to get at least 50 grams of carbs per hour.
Yep. That I know that I can, if I've packed that, I mightn't necessarily eat that. But then certainly when I was less experienced, I was more around the carbs, and then the more longer racing I've done, I have sort of swapped that calculation over to the calories a bit more to have the higher fat intake of like your ramen noodles and things like that, which don't really have a great deal of carb, but there's a lot of fat and a lot of calories in that, and that salty food's really important over the longer races. But yeah, my favourite, if we talk about our children, my daughter's favourite videos are any of the ones that she sees all the chocolate that we packed into the boat. And there's moments in the live tracking where the cameraman's speaking with Julian, and he opens up the drawer or the seat, storage seat on the boat, and it's like, 5 kilograms of chocolate in there as he pulls out another block or something like that.
Stash.
It's very efficient space saver, that chocolate, and Swedish chocolate's pretty good.
Yeah.
But we went through a lot of it. But there's only so much you can take on the boat. So, we do have gear and limitations. So you really have to be quite, tight with the amount of gear that you pack. But I did watch some of the live replays, and one of the Swedish, Marcus and Hillary and Mitch's team were talking about how they were running low on gels, and that was only early on in the second morning. I was like, oh, okay, they've either gone really hard on gels in that first 24 hours, or they sort of underestimated how many they would actually have. Yeah, it's certainly something that experience will help. And having done it twice, we'll just try to replicate what we did, last year, even down to staying in the same place, going shopping on the same day. We've got that down pat a bit now, and
nice.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said about sort of finding the routine and kind of the ritual for each race. And I mean, obviously last year, just if you're just looking at the results, you cracked the code, right? You won the race, which is the point, right? So it's like, now that you've cracked the code, is like, how can you replicate that experience? So it makes total sense that you would, not try to jinx it by doing anything radically different. I'm curious in that vein, from year one to year two, what was your pacing sort of idea? Like, let's just say like day one, are you trying to just stay in contact with people, or even right from the start, are you thinking about just running your own race? And how did that evolve sort of year over year?
Yeah, look, we don't think about it too much with the other teams. I know that I actually prefer to be on my own for the navigation, and that's why the first year where we had Martin Flinter's team on our heels for a good 24 hours, that was what was frustrating me more than anything. Like, it's good to have someone to talk to and share the experience with, but sometimes I just like to do my own thing and not have to worry about any other teams around me. Last year, I don't think we started off any faster, but I do feel like Team 7, Adriel's team, probably did start out even harder than what they had the year before. So they, pulled a 40 minutes on us in the first 8 hours or something like that. But again, we weren't really that concerned about that first 8 hours. And once we got into the night time, we caught back up with better night navigation as well. And then in terms of the other teams around behind us, well, you always want to keep thinking that they're pretty close and not get complacent. I know you're 30 hours in and it feels like you've been going a long time, but when you actually think that was only halfway, that's still a long time to have to keep moving. And there was comments around, well, we weren't really, that our team must have gone really hard to drop the other teams and create the 8 hour gap where they would have to withdraw. And that wasn't the case at all. But if we'd slowed down too much more, we may not have made the finish at all under the 65 hour cutoff too. So it only takes a really bad sleep monster episode and a navigation mistake, and time will disappear very quickly. So for us,
it's an interesting way of thinking about it. Like not like how fast you go, but how little you can slow down, and just trying to be like super, super steady.
Like I've never raced, like the long races, you always start off faster and you always finish slower. And there's not really that much point in saving yourself, I find, but you also don't want to go out on like a 20-kilometre run leg early on, say on the sealed roads, and run that up like it's a half marathon. And
that would be not advisable.
I covered that section in an hour and 20 minutes. Stoked.
Yeah, you want to kind of get through that in an hour 50, and then feel like you're still just going out for a long day. So you definitely don't want to blow up those legs. But the swimming component really does help with the recovery from the run too, especially with no kicking with the big pool boys. So going in and out of cold water, I feel like it does help you recover as you go along. Well, you don't get any fresher, but you you reduce how much you fatigue.
Or you reduce the decay. It seems like a little bit. Yeah. It sounds like you got a little bit of the gear dialed in as well with the two wetsuits. I know the water temps were a little bit colder there, and I think we had definitely heard that Adriel and Daniel and Kristen's team, they were supplied by ARC, and they were getting like dry, fresh wetsuits like on a regular basis, full length triathlon suits, and that seemed to be a pretty good strategy for some of those longer swims. Is that sort of an idea that you all sound like you deployed as well?
Yeah, look, we only had one long suit, and having watched some of the replays and seeing how other teams, where they changed and what they changed into. That's really interesting. But we didn't really have as many gear choices to choose from as the ARC sponsored team, and it was more like once we got cold, we put on another suit, and we just didn't really have much choice to think about it. After that, it was like, well, are you going to keep your neoprene cap on, or are you going to take your neoprene cap off? And then you just hope that we weren't going to get any colder than that, because moving in the full length wetsuits is pretty slow. And I know the American team last year, like they seem like they've ended up in the full tri suits quite early, and then it definitely slows them down on foot as well. But in the end, you've got to stay warm, and that's what's going to keep you in the race longer than. It's more important than anything.
Yeah.
Well,
so we're not going to change too much more. Too much. Hopefully, the weather's a bit warmer just to be, more enjoyable or more comfortable. But if it's not, well, we know that we can just keep putting on the layers and have to wear those full length wetsuits for longer.
I have a confession to make, Rob. Usually when we have guests and we're talking about races, it really doesn't matter what race it is. I'm always like starting to feel the FOMO, like, oh, I'd love to do this race.
No FOMO?
I'm not feeling any FOMO with this. This race, yes, it's technically a swim run. It's also an adventure race. It's like its own category. And it's just hard when I try to explain it to people. I'm continually trying to wrap my own head around it. How do you explain this race to people and have people not look at you like you're insane? Or
most of my friends know how insane we are already. But it's interesting that even in the adventure racing community around the world, there hasn't been that many teams willing to step up and take on the One Water Challenge. And it's just that swimming, it's not the distance for them. It's not the 60 hours. It's really just the sheer amount of swimming is not something that a whole lot of athletes have done in the world of adventure racing. And then the athletes that, are used to doing long swims, I guess they're probably as worried about being cold and sleep monsters and all the other things that we're not so worried about. So, and that's kind of stopping them from signing up as well. But look, most people do, think it's pretty crazy, even the swimmers that we swim with. But then I've got a friend that's training for the English Channel swim in July, and to me that seems even more extreme
crazy.
because they can't wear wetsuits, so they have to swim at pretty good pace the whole time just to make it across before they get cold. So there's always something new that scares you.
It's true. That's true.
Now I've heard you mention sleep monsters a couple times, and I guess that's sort of like sleep deprivation, sort of hallucinations or something that happens. And is that something that you sort of, with experience and with having more sleep monster episodes, you just sort of know how to handle it a little bit better, or you never really have a great grasp on it? It's like, if you could just come out on the right end of it, you're in a better place than others.
Yeah, look, I don't know that there's any right way or wrong way to deal with it. Hopefully it's only one person in the team having it at that one time, and you want to have someone else that's able, like, you don't want me falling asleep at the back and Glenn falling asleep at the front, then that's going to be, trouble. But if it's only really one person that's falling asleep, you preferably not the navigator. But there were stories that I've heard from my teammates only, quite recently, probably, about some of the sleep monsters that they've had in the last race that I didn't know was sort of going on at the time. But even on those long swims, a bit of a dream-like state and some hallucinations. Personally, I don't have any good hallucination stories from the One Water race. And, though, like last year where we did stop to have a sleep for an hour, it was pretty disappointing when you can't fall asleep after 40 hours because you've got mosquitoes buzzing around and you're still that wired that I just couldn't get to sleep. And then 2 hours later, you're trudging down the track, and then you are just nodding off the whole time. We actually stopped and had a 10-minute nap on the side of the road, and that was amazing, really.
Best nap of your life.
Yeah, that's right. And it just started to rain a little bit then, so we knew we weren't going to be able to stay there for long. But just had to shut those eyes for a little bit. And actually our photographer at the time he was quite fresh, so he was really talkative, but we just couldn't respond to him almost. It was, I can't imagine the live viewing at that stage was very interesting.
Wow. Amazing.
I don't know what else to cover.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're rooting for you going back. We'll be cheering from abroad. Are you gonna stick around and do ÖTILLÖ after the race?
Look, I haven't booked my flight yet. It's open. I've got all the search engines trying to find me the best flight. But no, I don't think it's going to happen this year either. I'd like to go back and have a longer holiday with the family at some stage and then fit in some events like that. I know Glenn and Elizabeth are certainly quite keen, but I don't think they're going to do it this year either. But look, I'd certainly a bucket race list to tick off. And when Julian often points out sections of the course that we go across, here's this swim, you've just done the second run. So, we've definitely covered a lot of that ground, but so good to actually go and do that race and do it fast too, like having watched a lot of the coverage of that race as well. And, I'd definitely love to pit ourselves against the best team, but Adriel, it was interesting watching Adriel's team and Daniel's team go head to head last year. They had a bit of extra energy to expel after not making it all the way through the race last year, but it just showed, how good athletes they were. But then, Hugo and Max are kind of a step above everyone else at the moment.
They're on another level.
Yep, they're in their own league. That's for sure. Yeah. Well, Rob, thank you so much for taking the time to come back on the show. It took us a while to get this dialed in, but once we were scheduling it, you're like, "Hey, I'm going to do New Caledonia." I was like, "Okay, well, let's just wait for that." But always great to see you. Best of luck. Happy training. Stay healthy, and we'll be rooting for you in 4 months, 3 months.
Yeah, it feels like it's getting close now. The winter, it is starting to get cold.
Yeah, you are in winter.
It's a matter of trying to keep healthy. But I have actually done a few more open water swims than what I had on previous years in the increasingly cold water. So hopefully I can keep that up. And looking forward to getting to Sweden and more fika.
Yes. Oh, yes. Now you're speaking our language.
Yeah. Like Elizabeth and I are having to debate about how early to get across there. And it's like there's advantages. You get more sleep. There's less things to do. But then there's also how many fika stops can you have before your performance is going to start.
You really need to build up those caloric reserves too. So I think it only behooves you to get over there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. All right. Thanks for your time, guys.
All right, Rob, thank you, and enjoy those new carbon paddles coming in.
Oh, yeah, not here yet, but hopefully by tonight.
Awesome. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating or review, since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swim run.
Check out our website, lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z, for swimrun resources, including gear guides, tips, how-to videos, and so much more. Make sure to check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boys on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, send us a DM or email us at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Riding Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swim run and other activities.
Lots of activities.
Lots of activities.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
Then a run.
And then a swim.
Then another run.
Then another swim.
Then run some more.
Just keep going.
Let's go.
And then stop at some point because,
And fuel. Don't forget to fuel.
Gotta fuel
Of
too.
course, yes.